Welcome to Science for Sleeping, where we transform complex science into peaceful journeys perfect for drifting off to sleep. Tonight we're exploring something extraordinary that's happening all around you, every single day, in complete silence. Plants evolving, adapting, surviving through innovations so clever they put human engineering to shame. If you're new here, this is your invitation to learn something wonderful while your mind gently settles into rest. We don't rush, we don't overwhelm. We simply explore the beautiful science of our world in a way that calms rather than stimulates, that soothes rather than excites. And if you love falling asleep to gentle knowledge, if you appreciate science told with wonder and care, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us create more of these peaceful explorations, and we'd be honored to be part of your nightly routine. Tonight's journey takes you into the secret life of plants, organisms you see every day but might never have truly considered. They can't run from danger, they can't hunt for food, they can't seek shelter from harsh conditions. Yet plants have conquered nearly every environment on Earth, from scorching deserts to frozen tundra, from ocean shores to mountain peaks. How? Through evolution, the slow, patient process of adaptation spanning millions of years, creating solutions so elegant that scientists are still discovering new innovations in plants we thought we fully understood. So settle in, get comfortable, let your breathing slow. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, you'll discover how plants evolved thorns and toxins to defend themselves, how they engineered partnerships with animals for reproduction, how they learned to survive months without water, how they communicate danger through airborne chemicals, and how they continue evolving right now in response to changing climates and new challenges. This is the story of life's quiet revolution, the plants that feed us, shelter us, and oxygenate our atmosphere, all while following evolutionary strategies refined across hundreds of millions of years. Let's begin. Section 1. The Art of Defense. How plants evolved to fight back. As your breath slows and deepens, consider a fundamental problem that plants face. They're rooted in place, unable to flee from threats. When a deer approaches to eat leaves, a tree cannot run. When insects land to devour tender shoots, a flower cannot escape. Plants are immobile targets in a world full of hungry herbivores. So how have they survived for 450 million years of being constantly eaten? Through evolution of remarkable defenses, chemical weapons, physical barriers, and strategic partnerships that protect them despite their inability to move. Picture, as you rest, a rosebush. Its thorns seem simple, sharp projections that discourage browsing. But they represent millions of years of evolutionary refinement. Thorns are modified branches or stems, hardened into points through selective pressure. Plants with better thorns survived herbivore browsing better than plants without them, produced more seeds, passed thorn-growing genes to offspring. Generation after generation, the most effective thorniness was selected for, until we have modern roses whose thorns are positioned strategically along stems, angled to catch on skin or fur, sharp enough to penetrate and painful enough to teach animals to browse elsewhere. But thorns are just the beginning. Many plants evolved chemical defenses far more sophisticated than physical barriers. Consider the tobacco plant, which produces nicotine, not for human smoking, but as a potent insecticide. Nicotine is toxic to many insects, disrupting their nervous systems, killing them, or making them too sick to continue feeding. The tobacco plant essentially manufactures its own pesticide, synthesizing complex molecules that deter herbivores. As sleep approaches, consider how these chemical defenses evolved. Plants that randomly mutated to produce mildly toxic compounds survived insect predation slightly better than plants without those compounds. They produced more seeds. Their offspring inherited the toxin-producing genes. Over countless generations, random mutations that enhanced toxin production or made toxins more effective were selected for, gradually refining chemical defenses through the patient, blind process of natural selection. The result is a chemical arsenal of staggering diversity. Caffeine, which you might have consumed today, evolved as an insect neurotoxin that protects coffee plants from herbivorous insects. Capsaicin, the compound making chili peppers hot, evolved to deter mammalian herbivores, who find it painful, while not affecting birds, who don't taste it and can spread seeds more effectively than mammals. Tannins in tea and oak trees bind to proteins, making leaves less digestible and nutritious for herbivores. Plants have evolved toxins affecting digestion, nervous systems, reproduction, growth. Thousands of defensive compounds, each refined through millions of years of evolutionary arms races between plants and the herbivores trying to eat them. And herbivores have evolved counter-adaptations, detoxification enzymes, tolerance to specific toxins, specialized gut bacteria that break down plant defenses. Evolution creates ongoing competition, with plants and herbivores constantly adapting to each other's innovations. Some plants evolve defenses so sophisticated they seem almost intelligent, though they're purely products of evolutionary selection. The acacia tree, threatened by herbivorous mammals, produces extra nectar that attracts ants. The ants live on the tree, feeding on nectar and special protein structures the tree grows specifically to feed them. In return, ants aggressively defend the tree, attacking any animal that tries to browse. The tree has evolved to recruit bodyguards, trading food for protection. A mutualistic relationship refined over millions of years. As you drift toward sleep, picture another remarkable defense: mimicry. Some plants evolved to look like less palatable species, gaining protection by resembling plants that herbivores have learned to avoid. Others evolved to look like stones or blend into rocky backgrounds, avoiding detection entirely. Camouflage in the plant kingdom, shaped by the same evolutionary pressures that created camouflage in animals. Consider also induced defenses, responses plants activate only when attacked, saving energy when threats aren't present. When insects chew on tomato plant leaves, the plant detects compounds in insect saliva and responds by producing protease inhibitors, chemicals that interfere with protein digestion, making the plant less nutritious to the attacker. The damaged plant also releases airborne chemical signals that warn neighboring plants, which begin producing their own defensive compounds before they're attacked. This chemical communication represents evolution of something like an immune system distributed across multiple plants. One plant's suffering benefits its neighbors through warning signals, and because many plants in an area are genetically related, siblings or clones, natural selection favors traits that protect relatives, even at individual cost. Evolution can favor cooperation when cooperators share genes. Rest now in the knowledge that every plant you see has been shaped by millions of years of herbivore pressure, developing defenses through countless generations of selection. The mint in your tea evolved aromatic compounds that deter certain insects. The lettuce in your salad evolved mild bitterness from compounds originally more potent, but later reduced as humans selectively bred milder varieties. The flowers in your garden evolved bright colors, partly as signals and partly as UV markers that guide pollinators to nectar while deterring some herbivores sensitive to UV patterns. Plants cannot run, but they have evolved to fight, with thorns and toxins, with partnerships and mimicry, with induced responses and chemical communication. They are not passive victims, but active defenders, armed with innovations refined across evolutionary timescales that dwarf human history. Every leaf, every stem, every root carries genetic instructions shaped by millions of years of survival challenges, creating the green world around you. A world that appears peaceful but is actually engaged in constant, invisible chemical warfare and evolutionary competition. Tonight, as you sleep, plants continue their ancient defense, producing compounds through biochemical pathways evolved over countless generations, standing immobile but not helpless, rooted but not vulnerable, silent but not defenseless. Evolutionary survivors whose strategies for stationary survival are among nature's most sophisticated achievements. Section 2. The Flower Revolution. Evolution's partnership with animals. As your muscles relax and your mind drifts into receptive calm, let us explore one of evolution's most beautiful innovations: flowers. About 140 million years ago, during the Cretaceous period, the first flowering plants, angiosperms, appeared and began a revolution that would transform Earth's vegetation. Today, flowering plants dominate terrestrial ecosystems, comprising about 90% of all plant species. Their success stems from an evolutionary innovation so effective it reshaped the planet, partnering with animals for reproduction. Picture, as you rest, the reproductive challenge plants face. Unlike animals that can move to find mates, plants are stationary. How does pollen from one individual reach the flower of another individual that might be hundreds of meters away? Early plants used wind, releasing vast quantities of pollen into air and hoping some would randomly land on receptive flowers. This works, but it's inefficient, requiring enormous pollen production and success rates of a fraction of a percent. Flowering plants evolved a better solution, recruiting animals as pollen delivery services. Instead of releasing pollen randomly into wind, flowers evolved to attract specific animals: insects, birds, bats, even small mammals, offering rewards like nectar or pollen itself in exchange for transportation services. The animal visits one flower, picks up pollen on its body, travels to another flower of the same species, and transfers pollen directly. Targeted delivery instead of random dispersal, dramatically increasing reproductive success. But this innovation required evolutionary changes in both plant and animal. Flowers needed to signal their presence from distance, offer rewards that attracted animals, position reproductive structures to maximize pollen transfer, and prevent wasting rewards on animals that wouldn't provide pollination services. Pollinators needed to recognize flower signals, extract rewards efficiently, and develop preferences for specific flower types to ensure they visited multiple flowers of the same species rather than mixing visits across many species. As sleep draws nearer, consider how these partnerships evolved. Imagine an ancestral plant with small, inconspicuous flowers, visited occasionally by insects seeking pollen as food. A random mutation made one plant's flowers slightly larger or slightly more colourful. Insects found these flowers easier to locate, visited them more frequently, and transferred more pollen. The mutant plant produced more seeds than its neighbours. Offspring inherited the larger flower genes. Over generations, selection favoured increasingly conspicuous flowers. Simultaneously, insects that learned to recognize and prefer these flowers found food more efficiently than insects feeding randomly. Selection favored insects with better color vision, improved ability to learn flower locations, and physical features that helped extract nectar. Plant and pollinator evolved together, coevolution, each adapting to the other, refining their partnership across millions of generations. The result is spectacular diversity in flower forms, each shaped by selection, pressures from specific pollinators. Bee-pollinated flowers typically are blue, purple or yellow. Colors bees see well, have UV patterns guiding bees to nectar, and have landing platforms where bees can perch. Bird-pollinated flowers typically are red. Birds see red well, bees don't. So red flowers reduce nectar theft by bees. Produce abundant nectar. Birds need more energy than insects and are tubular, matching bird beak shapes. Bat-pollinated flowers open at night when bats are active, are often pale or white, visible in darkness, produce strong odors, helping bats locate them, and have sturdy structures supporting bat weight. Beetle-pollinated flowers are often bowl-shaped, accommodating beetle body plans, produce strong fruity or spicy scents, attracting beetles, and are white or dull-coloured. Beetles have poor colour vision. Picture, as you drift towards sleep, the evolutionary refinement of orchids, perhaps the most sophisticated flower family. Some orchids evolved flowers resembling female insects so convincingly that male insects attempt to mate with them, getting covered in pollen during the pseudocopulation. Other orchids evolved complex trap mechanisms. Insects enter seeking nectar, trigger a mechanism that temporarily traps them, forcing them to exit through a specific route that ensures pollen transfer. Still others evolved flowers with nectar spurs so deep that only specific moth species with extraordinarily long tongues can access rewards, ensuring pollen transfer between orchids rather than losing pollen to generalist pollinators. Consider also the evolution of fruit, another partnership strategy. Fruits are ovaries that evolve to attract animals for seed dispersal rather than pollination. A plant encases seeds in nutritious, attractive tissue. Animals eat the fruit, digest the flesh, but not the hard seeds, and deposit seeds far from the parent plant, often in fertilizer-rich feces. This dispersal prevents offspring from competing with parents and allows colonization of new areas. Different fruits evolved to attract different dispersers. Berries, small, numerous, brightly colored, attract birds, which can eat many fruits and fly long distances, dispersing seeds widely. Large fruits like mangoes attract mammals, which carry fruit away from trees before eating. Burrs and sticky seeds evolve to attach to animal fur, hitchhiking to new locations. Each fruit type represents evolutionary solution to the dispersal problem, shaped by selection, favoring traits that maximized seed survival and spread. As you rest in drowsiness, consider that flowers and fruits seem designed. They appear crafted to attract specific animals, with colors, shapes, scents, and rewards precisely matched to pollinator or disperser preferences. But they weren't designed by intelligence. They evolved through selection. Variations that better attracted effective partners produced more offspring. Variations that didn't attract partners or attracted wrong partners left fewer offspring. Over millions of years, this simple process created the spectacular diversity of flowers and fruits you see today. The partnership between flowering plants and animals represents mutualism. Both species benefit from the interaction. Plants get reproduction services, animals get food. These mutualisms evolved because mutations benefiting the partner also benefited oneself through improved partner services. A plant that produces slightly more nectar attracts more pollinators, gets more pollination, produces more seeds. Selection favors generous nectar production up to the point where cost exceeds benefits. Evolution shaped not just physical features, but timing. Many flowers open only at specific times when their pollinators are active, conserving energy by not producing nectar when no pollinators are present. It shaped chemistry. Nectar contains not just sugars, but also amino acids, lipids, sometimes alkaloids or other compounds that affect pollinator behavior, making them more likely to visit more flowers or less likely to visit competing flower species. Tonight, as sleep approaches, recognize that every flower you've seen represents an evolutionary relationship, a partnership refined across countless generations, shaped by selection, operating on both plant and animal. The beauty of flowers isn't arbitrary or accidental, but functional. Colors, patterns, shapes, scents all evolved because they enhanced reproductive success by attracting the right partners. The flower revolution transformed Earth's ecosystems, creating new food sources that enabled diversification of insects, birds, bats, and other animals. Flowering plants' reproductive efficiency allowed them to outcompete many earlier plant groups, becoming dominant in most terrestrial habitats. The partnership between flowers and animals is one of evolution's greatest success stories. Mutual benefit driving mutual adaptation, creating complexity and diversity through the simple mechanism of selection, favoring variations that work better than alternatives. Rest peacefully, knowing that flowers aren't just pretty, they're evolutionary innovations, solutions to reproductive challenges, partnerships refined through millions of years of co-evolution. Every bloom is a message written for specific animals in colors and patterns those animals can perceive, offering rewards that make the partnership worthwhile, shaped by the patient, blind process of evolution into forms of stunning beauty and remarkable effectiveness. Section 3. Surviving Extremes, Desert, Arctic, and Aquatic Adaptations. As your breathing settles into the rhythm of approaching sleep, let us explore how plants evolved to survive in Earth's harshest environments. Places where water is scarce for months at a time, where temperatures plunge far below freezing, where salt concentrations would kill most organisms. Plants cannot migrate to better conditions when environments turn hostile. They must endure where they're rooted or die. So how have plants colonized deserts, Arctic tundra, and salt marshes? Through extraordinary evolutionary adaptations that allow survival in conditions that seem incompatible with life. Picture, as you rest, a cactus in the Sonoran Desert, surviving months without rain while temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius. How does it manage? Through multiple evolutionary innovations working together. First, water storage. The cactus's thick, fleshy stem evolved to hold vast quantities of water absorbed during rare rains. The stem expanded over evolutionary time from thin, woody branches into massive water-storing columns, with internal tissues modified to hold moisture without rotting. Second, reduced water loss. Most plants lose water through stomata, tiny pores in leaves where gas exchange occurs. Cacti evolved to open stomata only at night when temperatures are cooler and humidity higher, dramatically reducing water loss. But photosynthesis requires carbon dioxide uptake during daylight. How does the cactus solve this? Through CAM photosynthesis, crassulacean acid metabolism, where the plant absorbs CO2 at night, stores it chemically, then uses it for photosynthesis during day with stomata closed. This complex biochemical system evolved specifically for water conservation in arid environments. Third, leaf reduction. Leaves are the main sites of water loss, so many desert plants evolved to reduce or eliminate leaves entirely. Cacti spines are actually modified leaves, reduced to minimal surface area, serving defense rather than photosynthesis. The thick stem took over photosynthetic function, another major evolutionary modification allowing survival with minimal water loss. Fourth, extensive root systems. Cacti evolved shallow, widespread roots that can quickly absorb water from rare desert rains, plus deeper taproots reaching water tables far below surface. This dual root strategy maximizes water capture while providing drought backup. Each of these features: water storage, CAM photosynthesis, leaf reduction, specialized roots, evolved independently through selection favoring variants that survived drought better than their neighbors. Combined, they create plants that can survive a year or more without water, enduring in environments where most plants would die within weeks. As sleep draws nearer, consider Arctic plants facing opposite extreme, intense cold. How do plants survive winter temperatures of minus 40 degrees Celsius or colder? Through adaptations preventing ice crystal formation that would rupture cells, and strategies for functioning during brief summer growing seasons. Arctic plants evolved antifreeze compounds, sugars and proteins that lower the freezing point of cellular fluids, preventing ice formation at temperatures that would freeze pure water. Some plants tolerate ice formation outside cells, but prevent it inside cells through specialized cell wall chemistry. Others enter deep dormancy, where metabolism essentially stops, protecting vulnerable tissues by shutting down entirely during winter. Growth form evolved for Arctic survival. Many Arctic plants grow low to ground, forming cushions or mats that create their own microclimates, trapping heat and reducing wind exposure. Tiny size means an entire growing season's growth might be just a few millimeters, but this slow growth is sustainable with limited resources and short growing seasons. Arctic plants also evolved dark pigmentation that absorbs sunlight more efficiently, warming tissues above ambient temperature during the brief summer. Some flowers track the sun, heliotropism, maximizing sunlight capture and creating warmer microclimates within flowers that attract insects. These insects benefit from warm refuges, while plants benefit from pollination. Consider, as you drift toward unconsciousness, mangrove trees colonizing salt marshes, environments where soil salinity approaches seawater concentration, toxic to most plants. How do mangroves survive? Through evolved salt management strategies. Some mangrove species exclude salt at the root level, using specialized membrane proteins that filter seawater, allowing water uptake while blocking most salt. Other species absorb salt but secrete it through specialized salt glands in leaves, crystallizing excess salt on leaf surfaces. Mangroves also evolved aerial roots, prop roots, and pneumatophores that allow gas exchange despite roots being submerged in low oxygen mud. These roots grew evolutionarily from normal underground roots that developed pores and grew upward, eventually becoming the distinctive exposed root systems visible in modern mangroves. Picture yourself resting in awareness that plants occupy virtually every terrestrial and shallow aquatic environment on Earth. From Death Valley, where years pass without rain, to Arctic tundra, where ground stays frozen most of the year, to salt marshes where water is abundant but toxic. This remarkable range represents millions of years of evolutionary adaptation, with each extreme environment selecting for specific traits enabling survival. Aquatic plants evolved from terrestrial ancestors, losing features like thick cuticles, waterproofing unnecessary when submerged, while gaining features like flexible stems, bending with water currents rather than breaking, parenchyma tissue, air spaces enabling buoyancy and oxygen transport, and hydrophilous pollination, pollen adapted to water dispersal. Some aquatic plants evolved entirely submerged lifestyles, while others like water lilies evolved floating leaves that access atmospheric CO2, while roots remain anchored in sediment. Each lifestyle represents evolutionary solution to specific challenges of aquatic environments: reduced light penetration, limited CO2 diffusion in water, need for oxygen transport to submerged roots, seasonal water level changes. As you rest in deepening sleep, recognize that environmental challenges drive evolutionary innovation. Every extreme environment contains plants because, given enough evolutionary time, random mutations occasionally produce variations that survive conditions lethal to their ancestors. Those survivors reproduce, their offspring inherit survival traits, and gradually, through selection operating on variation, plants evolve to thrive in environments that initially seem impossible for life. The diversity of plant adaptations to extreme environments demonstrates evolution's power. No intelligence directs the process, yet it produces solutions of remarkable sophistication. Photosynthesis, antifreeze proteins, salt secretion glands, parenchyma tissue, each complex innovation built gradually through accumulation of small beneficial mutations across millions of generations. Tonight, as sleep claims you, plants worldwide continue surviving extremes. Desert cacti storing water through cool desert nights, Arctic flowers tracking the midnight sun, mangroves secreting salt through specialized glands, aquatic plants photosynthesizing in dim underwater light. Each survival represents evolutionary triumph, proof that given sufficient time and genetic variation, natural selection can adapt life to virtually any environment where liquid water exists and energy is available. The plants surviving Earth's extremes aren't the strongest or smartest. They're simply the descendants of individuals whose random mutations happen to confer survival advantages in specific environments. Evolution has no foresight, no plan, no goal. Yet, through the simple mechanism of selection, favoring variants that survive and reproduce better than alternatives, it has populated Earth with plants adapted to every conceivable environment, creating diversity and resilience through a process as mindless as erosion, yet as creative as anything intelligence has produced. Section 4. Chemical Communication. How plants talk without words. As your body settles into deepening rest, let us explore one of botany's most surprising recent discoveries. Plants communicate, not through sounds or gestures, but through chemistry, releasing airborne compounds that carry information to neighboring plants, signaling warnings, calling for help, even manipulating other organisms' behavior. These discoveries are revealing that plants, though lacking nervous systems, engage in sophisticated information exchange through chemical languages evolved over millions of years. Picture, as you drift towards sleep, a tomato plant being attacked by caterpillars. As caterpillars chew leaves, the plant detects compounds in their saliva, specific chemicals that identify the threat as insect herbivory rather than mechanical damage. This detection triggers a response. The damaged plant begins producing volatile organic compounds, airborne chemicals that disperse on wind, carrying information about the attack. Neighboring tomato plants detect these airborne signals through receptors on their leaf surfaces. Though not themselves attacked, they respond by activating their own defensive genes, producing protease inhibitors and other compounds that make their tissues less nutritious to caterpillars. They've received a chemical warning and responded by preparing defenses before attack arrives. This is plant communication, information transfer that benefits both sender and receiver, evolved because warning relatives who share genes increases the sender's inclusive fitness. But the communication becomes even more sophisticated. The damaged tomato plant also releases specific volatiles that attract parasitic wasps, natural enemies of caterpillars. These wasps detect the chemical signal, locate the damaged plant, and lay eggs in the caterpillars. Wasp larvae consume caterpillars from inside, eventually killing them. The plant has essentially called for help, using chemical signals to recruit bodyguards. A three-way interaction between plant, herbivore, and herbivore's predator, all mediated by evolved chemical communication. As sleep approaches, consider how this communication system evolved. Imagine ancestral plants that produced defensive compounds when damaged. Some of these compounds were volatile, evaporating into air. Random mutations in neighboring plants occasionally produced receptors sensitive to these volatiles. Plants with such receptors could detect nearby damage and prepare defenses preemptively, surviving herbivore outbreaks better than plants without receptors. Selection favored both volatile production and volatile detection, gradually refining the communication system. Similarly, parasitic wasps that randomly evolved sensitivity to plant volatiles could locate prey more efficiently than wasps lacking this sensitivity. Plants benefited from attracting wasps that removed herbivores. Wasps benefited from finding prey more easily. Selection favored both plant volatile production and wasp volatile detection, creating a mutualistic relationship mediated entirely by chemical communication. Evidence for plant communication now extends across numerous species. When sagebrush is damaged by herbivores, neighboring tobacco plants, a different species, detect sagebrush volatiles and activate defensive genes. When bean plants are attacked by spider mites, they warn neighboring bean plants, and also attract predatory mites that eat spider mites. When corn is attacked by beetles, it produces volatiles that attract beetles' parasitoids. Underground, plants communicate through mycorrhizal networks, symbiotic fungi that connect plant roots, creating what some researchers call a wood wide web. Plants can transfer resources through these networks and may transfer warning signals. A tree attacked by insects can signal through fungal networks, preparing neighbors for possible attack. Large trees can support smaller trees growing in deep shade by transferring carbon through mycorrhizal connections. Possible kin altruism if the smaller trees are offspring. Picture yourself as you rest in drowsiness beneath a forest canopy where trees are connected through underground fungal networks spanning acres, exchanging resources and potentially information, creating an interconnected community rather than isolated individuals. This network evolved because fungi facilitate nutrient exchange. Fungi provide plants with minerals extracted from soil. Plants provide fungi with carbohydrates from photosynthesis, a mutualism refined over 400 million years since plants first colonized land. Plants also communicate through root exudates, chemicals released into soil that affect neighboring plants. Some species release allelopathic compounds that inhibit competitors' growth. Chemical warfare preventing other species from occupying nearby space. Other species release compounds that stimulate beneficial soil bacteria or fungi, manipulating the microbial community to their advantage. Above ground, plants detect light quality changes, indicating nearby vegetation. When plants are shaded by neighbors, the spectrum shifts. More far-red light relative to red light penetrates through leaves. Plants detect this spectral change and respond by allocating more resources to stem growth, racing upward to overtop competitors. This is another form of information detection, sensing the presence of competitors through light quality and adjusting growth strategy accordingly. As you drift into sleep, consider that plants, though lacking brains or nervous systems, engage in sophisticated information processing. They detect environmental signals, light quality, chemical signals, touch, temperature, even sound vibrations in some cases, and respond with appropriate developmental or physiological changes. These abilities evolved through selection, favoring variants that responded effectively to environmental information, creating what some researchers call plant intelligence, not consciousness or thought, but complex information processing that guides adaptive responses. The chemical communication systems plants evolved represent solutions to the problem of living as sessile, immobile organisms in variable, sometimes hostile environments. Unable to move to better locations, plants evolved sensitivity to environmental information and ability to communicate with neighbors, creating early warning systems and recruiting help against threats, all without centralized processing, without consciousness, purely through biochemical pathways shaped by millions of years of selection. Tonight, as you sleep, plants continue their chemical conversations. Trees warning neighbors of insect attacks, flowers broadcasting scent advertisements to pollinators, roots secreting compounds that shape soil communities, damaged leaves releasing volatiles that call parasitoids. This communication is invisible to human senses, conducted in chemical languages we're only beginning to decode, but it's happening constantly, connecting plants in networks of information exchange that span forests, fields and gardens. Plants are not passive, isolated organisms, but active participants in chemical communication networks, both above and below ground, engaging in information exchange that shapes communities and enhances survival. They evolved these capabilities through the same process that shapes all biological complexity: random variation filtered by selection, favoring traits that work better than alternatives. The result is a green world engaged in constant chemical conversation, a silent symphony of signals exchanged through air and soil, connecting organisms in webs of communication refined across evolutionary timescales that dwarf human civilization. Section 5. Evolution continues, plants adapting to modern challenges. As your muscles fully relax and sleep draws very near, let us end our journey with a crucial realization. Plant evolution hasn't stopped. It continues right now, this moment, as plants worldwide respond to human-altered environments, changing climates, new pests, and novel selective pressures. Evolution is not ancient history, but ongoing process, observable in real time for organisms like plants that reproduce quickly and face strong selective pressures. Picture, as you rest, common ground cell, a small plant growing in gardens and disturbed soils. In the 1960s, ground cell populations near agricultural fields where triazine herbicides were applied began evolving resistance. Within a few plant generations, just years, resistant populations emerged, capable of surviving herbicide exposure that killed their ancestors. This is evolution observed in real time. Random mutations occasionally produced individuals with altered photosynthetic machinery unaffected by triazine. These mutants survived herbicide application, reproduced, passed resistance genes to offspring. Within a few generations, resistant genotypes dominated populations near herbicide-treated fields. Hundreds of weed species have now evolved herbicide resistance, some resistant to multiple herbicide classes. This is not planned adaptation, but evolution through natural selection. Herbicides create strong selective pressure. Rare resistant individuals survive and reproduce. Resistance spreads through populations. The same process that shaped plants over millions of years operates today, just faster because selection is intense and generation times are short. As sleep approaches, consider plant responses to climate change. Spring temperatures are arriving earlier at high latitudes and altitudes. Plants respond evolutionarily. Populations are evolving earlier flowering times, adapting to longer growing seasons. Studies comparing modern plants to preserved specimens from decades ago show measurable genetic changes, shifts in genes controlling flowering time, enabling plants to track changing climates. Range shifts are occurring as climate zones move poleward and upslope. Some plants migrate by seed dispersal into newly suitable habitats. But migration isn't always possible, so populations at range margins face selection for heat tolerance, drought tolerance, or cold tolerance as local climates shift. Evolution at range margins can be rapid because selection is strong. Plants without tolerance. Genes die. Plants with tolerance genes survive and reproduce, quickly shifting population genetics toward climate-adapted genotypes. Urban environments create novel selective pressures. Plants growing along roadsides evolve tolerance to salt from winter de-icing, heavy metals from vehicle emissions, compacted soils and fragmented habitats. Urban plantain populations have evolved smaller seeds that don't disperse as far, an adaptation to fragmented habitat where distant dispersal usually means landing in inhospitable pavement or buildings. Selection favors keeping seeds close to parent plants in rare suitable patches. Picture yourself as you drift toward unconsciousness, recognizing that every environmental change creates selective pressure. Invasive species introduce new competitors and herbivores, favoring plants that can resist or tolerate them. Habitat fragmentation reduces population sizes, changing evolutionary dynamics. Nitrogen deposition from air pollution alters soil chemistry, favoring species tolerant of high nitrogen. Increased atmospheric CO2 affects plant physiology, potentially favoring species that respond more strongly to CO2 enrichment. Some evolutionary responses involve interactions between plants and partners. As climates warm, flowering times and pollinator activity periods can become mismatched, plants flowering before pollinators emerge or vice versa. Selection favors plants whose flowering times track pollinator activity, gradually restoring synchrony through evolutionary adjustment. Similarly, plants and seed dispersers must maintain phenological matching, creating reciprocal selection that shapes both plant and animal evolution. Domestication represents rapid human-directed evolution. The vegetables you eat bear little resemblance to wild ancestors. Corn was derived from teosinte, a grass with tiny ears containing a few hard seeds. Modern corn has massive ears with hundreds of soft kernels. Cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, kale, and Brussels sprouts all evolved from a single wild ancestor through artificial selection for different traits. Wheat, rice, tomatoes, apples, all dramatically modified from wild forms through selection for traits humans value. These domesticated crops' evolution isn't fundamentally different from natural evolution. It's selection operating on variation, favoring traits that increase survival, or in this case, appeal to humans who plant and care for crops. The mechanism is identical. Only the selective agent has changed from natural environment to human preference. As you rest in deepening sleep, consider that evolution is neither slow nor finished. It operates continuously, generation by generation, favoring variants that survive and reproduce in current conditions. When conditions change through climate shifts, new pests, herbicide application, urbanization, domestication, selection favors different variants and populations evolve tracking environmental changes. This ongoing evolution means plants will likely adapt to many future challenges. Some species will evolve tolerance to warmer temperatures, altered precipitation, higher CO2. Others will fail to adapt quickly enough and face extinction. Evolutionary success depends on genetic variation, providing raw material for selection. Population size, larger populations harbor more variation. Generation time, faster reproduction allows faster evolution. And selective pressure intensity, stronger selection produces faster evolution. Understanding that evolution continues has practical implications. Herbicide rotation prevents resistance evolution by varying selective pressures. Conserving genetic diversity preserves evolutionary potential. Populations with more variation can respond to more challenges. Maintaining large populations reduces inbreeding and preserves rare alleles that might prove beneficial under future conditions. Tonight, as sleep finally claims you, rest knowing that the plants around you are not static but evolving. slowly but steadily adjusting to changing world, tracking environmental shifts through the same process that created all their remarkable adaptations. Selection operating on variation, generation after generation, mindlessly but effectively adapting populations to whatever conditions they face. Plant evolution is not a completed story, but an ongoing narrative. Every generation brings new mutations, most neutral or harmful, but occasionally beneficial. Every environmental challenge creates selection, favoring variants better suited to new conditions. The process never stops as long as reproduction continues and environments vary. Plants evolved over 450 million years from simple aquatic ancestors to the astonishing diversity of forms now covering land, and they continue evolving today, adapting to the Anthropocene, the current epoch defined by human impacts. Sleep peacefully in this knowledge. The green world surrounding you is product of billions of years of evolution, refined through countless generations, shaped by environments and interactions into the remarkable diversity you see today. And that evolution continues, silently, patiently, generation by generation, adapting plants to whatever future unfolds. Plants survived 5 mass extinctions, adapted to every terrestrial environment, and spread across continents. They will likely continue evolving, adapting, surviving through whatever changes lie ahead. Proof that evolution, though mindless, is among the most powerful creative forces in the universe, capable of producing complexity, beauty, and remarkable adaptation through nothing but variation filtered by selection across deep time. As you sink deeper into rest, let this final thought settle over you like a blanket. You are connected to this evolutionary story. The oxygen you breathe exists because of plant evolution. The food sustaining you comes from plants shaped by millions of years of selection, then further refined by human cultivation. The green spaces calming your mind are products of evolutionary processes operating since before animals walked on land. You are not separate from plant evolution, but intimately woven into it. Your existence depends on theirs. Your history parallels theirs. Your future links to theirs. And so, tonight, as consciousness fades and sleep arrives, you can rest knowing that evolution's patient work continues. In forests and fields, in gardens and greenhouses, in cracks in pavement and on mountain slopes, plants are living, growing, reproducing, varying, being selected. The great evolutionary process that created the botanical world operates still, adapting plants to current conditions, preparing them for future challenges, continuing the story that began when the first green cells captured sunlight and used it to build living matter from air and water. Let sleep take you now, peacefully, completely. The story of plant evolution surrounds you, supports you, sustains you. It is ancient beyond imagining, yet as fresh as tomorrow's seedling. It is finished in the sense that it has produced the remarkable world you see today, yet unfinished because it continues every moment. Rest in this continuity. Rest in this connection. Rest in the knowledge that evolution, patient, powerful, and persistent, shapes the living world now, as it has always done, will continue doing, creating endless forms most beautiful. Sleep now. The plants are evolving still.